Hi, folks. Thank you for waiting for so long. Yeah, welcome and thank you for being here today. So, my name is Tausif and an enthusiastic speaker on DPDP, and I'm a part of Aduzuki Tech Solution. It is a technology company committed to helping an organizations um, navigating India's evolving digital and compliance based landscapes. Today, I'm here on behalf of Drutsuki Tech Solution talk about something that is no longer just a conversation for legal or IT departments. It is now a boardroom conversation, a business strategic conversation, and for many organizations across India, a survival conversation. Because the rules, how you collect the data, store and protect a personal data has been changed permanently. In this session today, I'll be talking about DPDP, the DPDP Act 2023, India's most significant privacy legislation, commonly known as the DPDP Act. It affects every organization operating in India digitally and ecosystem. However, by DPDP term, you can get to know it's all about data protection. In the next 15 minutes, I would walk you through the key points. What is DPDP? Before and after DPDP, and why it came into an existence, and exactly how it can protect an individual and whom it can protect. Which industries are going to face a high risk on this, and I'm going to end my topic by the penalty phase. So let's begin. So guys, first slide. Oh, let us understand what is DPDP here. So DPDP in the sense digital personal and data protection means from the term itself you got to know what is DPDP means the data protection was passed in August 2023 and it came into the force 13 November 2025. In simple term, we can define DPDP as it is India's first law that protects your personal data in online. You can say as a digitally. That could be either your name, your phone number, your Aadhaar, your bank details, your health records, anything that identifies you digitally is now legally protected. Any company that collects your data must have your permission. Use it only for the right reason. Keep it secure and delete it. Let us go through with an example so that we can grab the concept easily. So previously we used to use an applications, the apps that might ask the permissions, contacts, photos without explaining why. Because there were no reason. There was no law which were stopping them because they were eagerly collecting everything. The company stores your data forever, but you might not know. No obligation, no deletion. It's once the purpose was over. If your data is leaked, no company was legally required to inform you. You could be a victim. You would never know about it. You had a zero knowledge right to ask a company what the data held on you because to get it collected or have it deleted. So the data can be misused, negligence, careless with zero financial penalties. So let us talk about before versus after. So this would be an interesting topic. So yeah, let me show you exactly like what has been changed in the industry and business and the citizen perspectives. Before and after this law came into the force, before app could ask allow permissions, location, contact and camera with no explanation. But after DPDP came into an existence, explicit consent is now mandatory. Company must clearly specify and state why each data is needed. Before, the company used to store your data a number of time for years, even for decades, with no obligation to delete it. But after DPDP came into an existence, data must be permanently deleted when the user request. So before, if your data was leaked in a breach or a company had zero obligation to inform you, but now you will get a notification from a company saying that this customer's data had been breached. But before, companies face no meaningful financial penalties nor data misusage or negligence. But now violations carry penalty from 50 lakhs to 250 crore per violations. Every single one, this changes in no legally enforceable, not even advisory. For businesses, this means your entire approach of collecting, storing, and processing the data. So, as we got an overview, what is DPDP and what was before and what was after, let's proceed understanding why DPDP came into an existence. As you know, guys, India was growing, and even though now it is growing fast digitally, but the growth came with the dark side that nobody was talking about openly. Your data were everywhere, and nobody was protecting it. Even though when we apply for jobs, the job portals are selling candidates' profiles with without anyone knowing. Telecom companies were sharing your calls records with third parties. Insurance companies were using your health history to quietly reject your claims. And even though e-commerce platforms were tracking everything you browsed and selling it, that behavior to advise, and when any of this wrong action, you had no even compliant to not even law existed to the protect you. Even though as we are a citizen, we are becoming as a victim of their own digital footprint, isn't it? So the government saw this and they realized that if the India was going to grow digitally, it had to be grown responsible. People needed protection, companies needed accountability. So for a moment, I want to stop here, uh, because I want to be absolutely direct with you about what non-compliance looks in a practice, not in the theory, but in a reality. So consider there is a scenario, all right? So this is an example scenario. Ask yourself honestly if it could happen in your organization, a mid-size HR firm, a payroll service firm. They manage employees' records for 40 corporate clients. In their database, 300 plus employees' profiles, full name, PAN number, bank account details, salaries, histories, home addresses, and medical insurance records. For this, we need one server, isn't it? And what if the server has not been updated? The weak password, never audited, then external factor. could enter in this server. Within 48 hours, the entire database is on dark web. This is not a hypothetical, this is an exact pattern of what has already happened across HR firms, edtech startups, hospital, telecom, backends, all stuff. Under DPDP, the both companies and the vendors are fully liable. The DPDP Act does not ask you about how big your company is. It asks you a question. Did you protect the personal data you were trusted with? If the answer is no, the penalty is same as regardless of your firm size. So I'm not just kidding. This is an reality. So let's proceed with how DPDP protects. As we got an overview of why DPDP came into an existence, all thing, then can we understand about how DPDP protects Indian citizens? So explicit consent required means before collecting any personal data, for example, you're having a company. Before collecting any personal data, the company must ask you clearly what they need and why. No more hidden permissions, no more buried in terms of conditions. So before collecting any of the information, the company must ask your consent. Then minimal data collection means, let us understand with an example. A food delivery app needs your address, not your employment details. Correct? So third point, secure storage mandate means every organization must implement strong security measures, encryptions, access control, regular audits. This could be a mandatory procedure to having a strong security enough. Then 4 point, timely deletion means once the purpose of the data is fulfilled in an organization, it must be deleted, right? So no holding onto it. Example, we can understand, if you delete your account on e-commerce platform, so your addresses and the payment history must go with it, like it has to be deleted. Then coming back to fifth point, breach notification means, as we discussed in the previous slides, that if your personal data is compromised, so the company must inform you immediately whether the data has been breached or not. No delays, no cover-ups. Then coming back to the sixth point, legal accountability means organization misuses or neglects the data or fails to protect personal data face a serious consequences on penalty under DPDP, right? So as we got an overview of how DPDP protects Indian citizens, let us understand with whom does DPDP protects every Indian citizens whom personal data is collected digitally, but let us be specific because every single personal and your audience today's fails into one of these categories: individual citizens, employees and workers, women's, senior citizens, businesses and minors. I don't need to explain much about this because you got an idea what is this, like whom does DPDP protects. Let's proceed further. This is one of the important topic which industries need to be worry about DPDP the most. Yes, DPDP applies to everyone, but some industries needs to be extra careful. These are the sectors that holds your most personal information, your bank details, your health records, your children's information, your salary, your passports. Think about it. If a hospital leaks your medical records, that affects your job, your relationship, your life. If a bank leaks your accounts details, these are the examples. I'm walking you through the examples so that you can get a more idea on this. These are the industries like bank, fintech, education, edtech, healthcare, travel, hospitality, SaaS products, e-commerce, deliveries, governments, and public services. So if your organization sits in any of this sector, TPTP compliance is not optional. It is urgent. So, yes, we have already discussed that the situation was like before and after the DPDP Act, why DPDP Act was introduced, how it helped protect the people personal data as an Indian citizen who is designed to protect, and which industries need to be worried about more. Now let's us move on to the next part, understanding the penalty. This is the one of the major topic. So let us talk about the number that has every boardroom paying attention. Yeah, 200 crores and 250 crores per violation. Yes. Why this scale? Why such a big number? Obviously, India is growing digitally and the population is enormous. A single security failure can expose the personal data of millions of citizens, isn't it? The penalty is designed to ensure companies can never economically justify the negligence. Who get penalized? Any organization, startup, SMBs, MNCs, IT companies, banks, hospitals, tech sectors that collects your process and data. So, as we got an overview of DPDP, understanding each and every aspects in theoretical plus with an examples. Let me close with what matter most. Data is most valuable asset of the 21st century. The DPDP Act is an Indian declaration that this asset belongs to an individual, isn't it? Not to the organization that collects it. For the businesses, they might get afraid, fear about it. No, this is not about getting scared or getting afraid or something. No, this is about responsibility. The organization that embeds data protection into how they can operate, not as in compliance checkbox. So the question is not whether DPDP affects your organization. No, it does. The question is whether you act before a violation force you to. Yes, we are going to take an initiate on this. We are going to be as a compliant based platform. I'm going to end my conversation by giving a quote: stay compliant and stay protected. Now I would like to hand over to our Vishnu Prasad, who will walk us through technical aspects in more details. So Vishnu Prasad, over to you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Tosif, making us to understand about DPDP. Today, I want to walk you through the technical side of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, what we commonly call DPDP. Key roles
Yeah.
and actors. Every DPDP conversation starts with four key actors, and getting this definition right is critical because the law assigns every different obligation to each one. First is data principle. The data principle is simply the individual whose personal data is being collected or processed. For example, if a person installs a mobile application and provides their name, phone number, or location, that person becomes the data principal. Next is data fiduciary. The data fiduciary is the organization that decides why and how personal data will be used. In most cases, This is the company that owns the application or services. Then we have the data processor. A data processor is that vendor, a third party processing data on your behalf under contract. They are not independently liable under the act, but you are the responsible for ensuring they comply. Yeah. Finally, there is a consent manager. Consent manager is neutral platform that helps manage, track user consent. It ensures that consent is properly recorded, stored, and verified before any personal data is processed. Yeah, as I said, like if person install any app, they will provide like name, mobile number, location, and some other details. It will, yeah, we have core principle of DPDP. Now let's look at the core principle that guides the DPDP framework. These principles defines how organization should handle personal data responsibly. The first principle is purpose limitation. This means that person data can only be used for the specific purpose that was communicated when data was collected. If an organization wants to use the data for other purpose, it must obtain fresh content is needed. The second principle is data minimization. Collect only what you actually needed. Every data field you collect must be justifiable. Third data principle, data accuracy. When you are making decisions that affects individuals, the data must be correct. Users have the right to demand corrections. They can ask you to update any changes they want. Yeah. Storage limitations. You can't hold data indefinitely. Once the purpose is fulfilled or consent is withdrawn, deletion must be begun. Yeah. Fifth principle is responsible security. Reasonable security, sorry. Organization must implement strong technical safeguards such as encryption, access control, monitoring, and breach detection to protect personal data. And finally, accountability. You remain responsible even when you outsources, audit trials, documented legal basis, and grievance mechanisms are non-negotiables. Yeah. Data lifecycle. To ensure compliances with DPDP, organizations must manage personal data through a clearly defined life cycles. First stage is collect. Personal data must be collected lawfully with clear notice and explicit consent from the user. The second stage is store. Once collected, the data must be stored securely. This typically involves encrypted storage, restricted access, and activity logging. The third stage is process. Organization can process personal data only for personal purpose for which consent was given. Any other user requests, we need to take fresh consent. The fourth stage is share. If the data needs to be shared with partners or service providers, it must be done under strict contractual safeguards and only the minimum required data field should be shared. Yeah. Fifth stage is retain. Personal data should only be kept for limited period based on the purpose or legal requirements. Finally, the sixth stage is delete. Once the purpose is fulfilled or consent is withdrawn, the data must be securely and permanently deleted from all the system. And also audit should be deleted. Logs, audit, everything should be deleted. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you. I gonna hand over to Shubha, who is gonna explain real world workflow.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shubha. So before moving to the Q&A session, I would like to thank Taushif and Vishnu for the insightful session on the DPDP Act. So I would like to mention our healthcare application, which is called MedZub. So in our MedSub application, we are handling the healthcare sensitive data. So like we are collecting the patient details and the medical documents. So to ensure the data privacy and the secure, so we implemented the key principles of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. So before collecting the data from the user, for example, if you are collecting few personal data like name and the phone number, so before collecting the data, first we are asking the permission of the user. And and also in the consent, so we are clearly informed them, like why we are taking the data and what are the data we are taking and how we are using it. Okay, for example, in our app we are taking the user phone number for send the notifications. Okay, so we are not taking the Aadhaar card. So here the main thing is we are only collecting the necessary data, and the data is used strictly for the health purpose only. We are not using for the other purpose. We are only use it for the healthcare purpose, and also we are mainly focused on the access control. Okay, so the only the authorized peoples can only the access the data or view the data. Okay, nobody, if unauthorized persons, they won't even allow to see the data and won't even get the data also. So this is what we really implemented in our healthcare application. So you will ask how you guys are taking the consent from the page, I mean users or yeah, what users. So basically, when we are onboarding a user or when we are booking appointments, so the staff or the therapist is explaining, is presented with the clear consent notice. Okay, so then the user will read and agree the consent. Once patient read or once the user read and agrees to the consent, then the system will generate a one OTP for the verification. Okay, so once the OTP is provided by the patient and the entered by only the authorized staff to confirm the patient approvals. Okay, so after successful the OTP verification, so we are using a one CMS tool. Okay, that is a consent management system in order to record all the consent of the users. Along with we are saving with along the consent records, we are saving timestamps and also the sorry, whatever the process. So the process, sorry, the main intention of the uh, mm, data collecting and all. So this is how we are implemented. And in our healthcare application, so as Vishnu told, there are three roles in the healthcare, sorry, in the DPDP. So the data principal and the data fiduciary and the data processor. So when it's come to the data principal, in our application, the patients are the data principals, the person whose data is collected, who is the owner of the data. For example, we are collecting the phone number or we are collecting the name or some healthcare details we are collecting, then the patient or the user or the data principal, so he is the owner of the that data. And when it comes to the data fiduciary, basically the organization, like let's take healthcare providers or the hospitals or the clinics, they will decide, they are the decision makers. Okay, so they are taking they are taking the decisions, why we are collecting the data and what data we are collecting and how we are using it. Let's take yeah, I already gave the example. We are taking the phone number to send the SMS. We are clearly informing to the patients, and then only we are taking the consent from the patients, then only we can process the data. So when it comes to the data process, the company which provide the technology or or any entity process the data on behalf of the data fiduciary means on the behalf of the hospital, on behalf of the clinics, or on behalf of the healthcare providers, we are just collecting the data and we are processing the data. And already Vishnu told we have to use only the necessary data we have to use, and minimal data we have to collect from the users and the patients. And when it comes to the consent withdrawal, so I just wanted to talk about the consent withdrawal. Okay, so basically user will give the consent once they agree during the registration or booking an appointments. Okay, the consent will be stored along with the timestamps and the user ID and the purpose why we are collecting the data. So the all the consent will be stored in the secured cloud storage. Okay, and then when it's come to the user request, sometimes the user won't they wanted to withdraw the consent, so they will request the withdraw consent, and we are keeping the data records for the for required by the law. So this is the restrictions we added in the our application. And so you may ask, so you guys are like storing the data, so how long you can use the data and all. So only as long as the necessary for the purpose it was collected. So there is no fixed number of years. But in the healthcare sectors, basically the health hospitals or healthcare providers usually keep the medical records 3 to 7 years. 3 to 7 years. It's mainly depending on their regulations and all. So that is also some reason is also there to keep the data to 3 years to 7 years, because sometimes the users will claim the insurance and they will ask for the medical reference or the legal disputes and all. So this, or we can use or we can archive the data securely and all. So this is how we are implemented. So yeah, no, thank you for giving this opportunity to talk about the DPDP. So now the floor is open for the questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Shubha. So, guys, if you have any questions regarding anything, you can proceed. Okay, I would like to answer Gambhir's question. Any common consent is there as per DPTP to take from patient for healthcare services? Okay, I would like to say no. The as per the DPTP Act 2023 does not prescribes any standard or common consent. So any format for the patient. However, so healthcare provides must obtain a clear and specific informed consent before processing any personal data. Yeah.
I just wanted to add on one point. Yeah, in the consent, we are clearly mentioning, for example, if you are using some personal data like phone number or the location, we are clearly mentioning why the data we are collecting and what is the purpose. So then also they will also get the transparency. So why we are using the data. So then if they agree, then only we'll process the data.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gambhir.
I got a question.
In that certain cases, the patient may not have the clear defined treatment protocols from the primary surgeon. In such situations, the therapist may follow the protocols or the guidance provided by the consulting specialist. So based on the patient condition and the clinical judgment. So any deviation from the original protocol or delays in the patient progress, it may sometimes lead to the clinical errors or the different treatment outcomes. Therefore, it is an important to document the treatment decision and consultant recommendation. The patient progress properly to ensure transparency. So the clinical continuity and the quality monitoring and accountability. So handling the legal disputes. Oh yeah, you asked one more question. DPDP like was data minimization as well as the data accuracy. So like how we minimize the data. So how we minimize the data means, for example, if you are taking let's take we are filling a one form. for onboarding a patient or something. We just only needed the patient name and the phone number and even what treatment diagnosis we are giving. So we don't want to take the Aadhaar and all. Sometimes they will take Aadhaar card details and the bank details. This is not necessary. So there we will minimizing the data. The phone number is needed for the sending SMS, and we are taking the name to identify the patient, and we are taking the diagnosis thing to give the treatment. So we are not taking the other unnecessary data like Aadhaar card, bank details, which is not required. So where we exactly we are minimizing the data.